my studio. Today I am going to test Daniel Smith Mayan Yellow. I haven't had it for very long, so I'm going to be very curious to find out what happens when I do this video. I am going to start by using it pure to show you what color it is. Then I am going to compare it to all the other yellows on my palette. And then I'm going to mix it with some blues and I'm going to mix it with some reds to see what happens when I try to make secondary colors with it. Let's start with the specs. Mayan Yellow is transparent, it's light fast, it's non-granulating and non-staining. So far, it ticks all the boxes that I like about my paints. The pigment is PY223 and it's a series 3, so it's one of their most expensive pigments. Daniel Smith described it as being highly saturated. Personally, I don't find it as saturated as other yellows I have on my palette. It's a very odd yellow. It's definitely orange bias, but it's almost like a cloudy color. A little bit chalky, yet it's transparent. It's almost like you added a tiny touch of yellow ochre into a mid-yellow, for example, Queen of Talon Yellow. So we're gonna have a look at how it compares with my other yellows. So the first one is Hansa Yellow Light, and you can see with Hansa Yellow Light, which is definitely a green bias yellow, that Mayan Yellow definitely looks orange bias. And then I have Queen of Talon Yellow, and Queen of Talon Yellow is what I would call a mid-yellow. And this is what I would call also a saturated pigment. You can see the saturation is higher compared to Mayan. This is really a lovely yellow Queen of Talon. They started it as a limited edition and they ended up adding it to the range permanently. Then I've got Nickel Azo Yellow. And so far, this is the most similar one I have to Mayan Yellow, but it is more golden. And then I've got Hansa Yellow Deep, which is my orange bias yellow. And then you can see that the orange bias in Mayan Yellow is actually not that strong, because compared to Hansa Yellow Deep, it's really not that orange. I also have Permanent Yellow Hue, which again is an orange bias yellow, but less saturated than Hansa Yellow Deep. And it really is almost more than an orange bias yellow, I would say. Although it's called yellow, I would say that's really borderline orange, that one. Hansa Yellow Medium, which is as saturated as my Queen of Talon Yellow, but slightly more orange, but not orange enough to be an orange bias yellow. I think it's more of a mid-yellow, and as it's called Hansa Yellow Medium, that's actually quite lucky. Right, so you can see here the Mayan Yellow compared to the other ones. It's a lot more orange than Hansa Yellow Light. It's more orange than Queen of Talon Yellow. It's about the same as Nickel Azo Yellow. It's less orange than Hansa Yellow Deep. It's less orange biased than Permanent Yellow Deep. And it is more orange biased than Hansa Yellow Medium. Now we're going to see what happens when I mix it with other colors. We're going to try to mix it first with my blues to make some green. Being a botanical artist, I'm always on the lookout for new greens. So let us start with Cerulean Blue, which is the most green bias blue that I have on my palette. Now, because Cerulean Blue is granulating, very heavily granulating, it's going to make a very textured green and a quite dull green, really. which would look really nice on the underside of some fruit foliage, for example. Then I have Tallow Blue green shade. It looks very similar. There isn't that much, which is not surprising because it is also a green bias blue. So it makes a very similar color, but with less granulation. Then we have Indantron Blue, and that makes a very, very yucky, which is the technical term, very unsaturated green. And that is not a green that is useful for many things. Then I have Tallow Blue red shade, and that makes a very unsaturated green as well, but much cleaner than the one made with Indanthrene. So that is actually quite a useful green for unsaturated foliage or for landscapes in the autumn, perhaps. And my last one is French Ultramarine. That's my last blue. And again, a very unsaturated green, but not a dirty one. It's got a nice sage green, so that works quite well. That would work really well for the sea in winter as well. One that I would like to try, which isn't technically a blue, but is the closest to a blue I have in my green range, is Viridian. Because I suspect that's going to make a very interesting green. Yeah, that's a lovely green. Again, really nice for the underneath of leaves, and it's a much cleaner green, much purer, more transparent greens than the other one. So that's with Viridian. So as a conclusion, Mayan Yellow, being orange biased, will never make a bright green when mixed with the blues. They're all very unsaturated. Some are downright pretty much dirty, and that will get muddy very quickly. Some of us, like Viridian or Tallow Blue green shade, are actually quite clean, muted greens. And surprisingly, French Ultramarine, which is my most violet bias blue, should have been very unsaturated and quite muddy, but it actually makes this really nice dark sage green. Now let's see what happens when I mix it with reds to make orange. And I'm going to start with Pyrrole Scarlet. Now Mayan Yellow being a orange bias yellow and Pyrrole Scarlet being an orange bias red, you would expect that to be quite a saturated orange. And then the next one is Pyrrole Red. So another Pyrrole pigment, but more of a mid-red. So it makes a redder orange, but also less saturated orange, more of a burnt orange. Then I have Carmine, which is my violet bias red, and that is a gorgeous, very burnt orange, darker mix. Then we can try a couple of pinks, see what happens. I'm curious to see what would happen with Quinacridone Coral, which is already quite a salmony colour. I expect I'm gonna get a nice salmony orange. Yeah, but it's definitely peachy salmon colour. And then we're gonna try Quinacridone Pink. That's another really nice peachy colour. And we're gonna go as far as Quinacridone and Lilac. Why not? They don't want to mix those two. They're like, we're too far apart. What are you doing? Wow, make some maroon red. That's a nice color too. Okay, so the results of the orange mixes, they're actually not as saturated as you would expect with an orange bias yellow. For example, just to compare, if I mix Hansa Yellow Deep with Pearl Scarlet, I get a much more saturated color. So considering that Mayan Yellow is an orange bias yellow, it actually doesn't make very saturated oranges. They're all a little bit subdued, from pale muted orange to a dark burnt orange, a couple of nice peachy salmony color to a sort of maroon red. So all very useful to have, but if you want something saturated in the orange range, it's a bit of a mouthful, in the orange range or in the green range, neither get saturated colors with Mayan Yellow. And I think this is due to this slightly claddy appearance that it has. It might be transparent and it might be non-granulated, but it's not very glowy compared to other yellows. Now, what happens when I actually use it in a painting? You can see here on my preparation sheet for this one, the difference between Mayan Yellow and Hansa Yellow Light. You can see how unsaturated it is. And when I actually use it in the painting, I've mixed both of them, so straight on the paper. So I've got some Hansa Yellow Light at the base of the petal, and then as I go further out, I'm using Mayan Yellow. And for that rose, it's actually perfect. Because it's a rose, I'm going to show you the rose, the real thing. It's a rose that actually has quite a chalky quality to it. The yellow doesn't glow on it. It's very matte. It's almost like chalk paint. So for that, Mayan Yellow was very, very good. Will I keep it in my palette? Yes, I will. When I first got it and I tried it, I thought, no, this is just too weird a color. It's not going to be useful for anything. And I have found myself using it more and more. And especially as rose season is happening, I have actually found myself using it quite a lot for roses. So yes, Mayan Yellow has earned its place on my palette permanently. See, it's here. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was useful. Please use the comments if you want to ask anything about Mayan Yellow, or if you have experience with it and you want to share with us, or if there are other yellows that do the similar kind of job but you like better. I always read the comments and I answer them. And I really like interacting with you, and I like all of you to interact with each other as well. So never hesitate to write comments. In my next video, I will use Mayan Yellow in a tutorial. So that's coming up next, to see what happens when I use it in a real painting. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the video, that really helps my channel. If you want more in-depth tutorials, check out my Patreon site. I will put the details in the box below. And I will see you soon in another video in Atelier Sandrine Mogy. Happy painting, bye!